Today, we are diving into one of the most famous and honestly most consequential battles in all of military history, the Battle of Austerlitz. You might also know it as the Battle of the Three Emperors. All right, so picture this. It's December 2nd, 1805. Near a little town in Moravia, Napoleon Bonaparte pulls off what is widely considered his tactical masterpiece. I mean, this was a victory so absolute, so complete, that it literally redrew the map of Europe. And that's the real kicker, isn't it? That's the question we're going to tackle. The French were in a really tough spot. They were outnumbered and they were deep inside enemy territory. So how in the world did Napoleon flip a massive strategic disadvantage into one of the most legendary victories in the history of warfare? To really get how he did it, we first have to understand the sheer scale of what he accomplished here. See, Austerlitz isn't just another famous battle. It's practically the gold standard for military genius. You know, think about the company Austerlitz keeps. We're talking about legendary, almost mythical victories, battles that are still studied thousands of years later as the absolute peak of strategy. To this day, military academies all over the world use Austerlitz as a masterclass in how to use deception, timing, and flawless execution. And the tool Napoleon used to achieve this was his Grande Armée. Now, this wasn't just some huge mob of soldiers. It was a modern, incredibly flexible fighting machine. It was organized into these independent corps that could fight on their own for a while, which meant the whole army could march way faster and adapt to situations much more quickly than their opponents. That structure, it was a weapon all by itself. So, okay, you've got a brilliant general and an incredible army. But they're still outnumbered, and their supply lines are stretched dangerously thin. This is where the real genius of the whole thing comes into play. Napoleon didn't just plan a battle. He was setting up an elaborate, absolutely brilliant trap. Let's just take a second to appreciate how risky this whole situation was for the French. They'd just had this lightning campaign, they'd even captured Vienna, but now they were in a really tough spot. Their supply lines back to France were super long and vulnerable, and this huge Russo-Austrian army was closing in. One wrong move, one defeat here, and it could have been game over for the Grande Armée. So what does Napoleon do? He actually leans into the appearance of weakness. He sends out diplomats to talk about peace, he makes his army look like it's disorganized and on its last legs. But here's the hidden ace up his sleeve. He's got two entire army corps under Marshals Bernadotte and Davout just out of sight, ready to force march an insane 110 kilometers in just 48 hours to get to the battle. The Allies saw what they thought was a weak hand. Napoleon was hiding a royal flush. And it all comes together in this beautiful, simple, and absolutely devastating four-step plan. Step 1, convince your enemy that you're weak, that you're about to retreat. Step 2, deliberately give up the best ground on the entire battlefield, the Pratzen Heights. Step 3, lure them into attacking your right flank, which you've made look intentionally weak. And finally, step 4, when they take the bait and empty their center to crush your flank, you unleash your main force, hidden until now, to smash right through their weakened middle. And this quote just says it all, right? It shows you how confident Napoleon was. He wasn't just hoping the Allies would be foolish enough to abandon the high ground. He was counting on it. He knew their leaders were arrogant, that they were desperate for a glorious win. He laid out the bait, and he was completely certain they'd take it. The entire battle hinged on that one prediction. And oh, did they take it. The Allied command, which was this mix of overeager Russian nobles and by-the-book Austrian planners, walked straight into the trap Napoleon had so carefully laid for them. So this is really the crucial moment in their command tent. You've got this veteran Russian commander, General Kutuzov, who is incredibly cautious. He senses that something isn't right here, that this feels too easy, and he actually wants to retreat. But nope, he gets completely overruled by the young, hot-headed Tsar Alexander I and his advisors, who just see a chance to win a glorious victory against a supposedly weak and cornered Napoleon. And right here you can see their plan taking shape. Look at that huge mass of Allied forces swinging south to try and crush what they think is the weak French right flank. They are doing exactly what Napoleon wanted, what he predicted they would do. They're pouring their troops off the high ground of the Pratzen Heights, leaving their own center dangerously exposed. The trap was set, and the doors were about to slam shut. What happened next has become the stuff of pure legend. The morning of December 2nd started with a really thick fog covering the battlefield. And that fog would end up playing a central role in the battle's incredibly dramatic climax. So at 9 a.m., this is the situation. The Allied columns are hammering away at the French right flank, and that flank is being held just barely by Marshal Davoust's exhausted men who've just arrived after that insane forced march. But look at the center. The Pratzen Heights are almost totally empty. Napoleon has been sitting there, watching, just waiting for this exact moment. Napoleon, watching all this unfold from his command post, turns to Marshal Soult, whose entire corps has been hiding in the morning mist right at the base of the heights. He asks Soult, "How long will it take you to get to the top?" Soult says, "Less than 20 minutes, sire." And with perfect timing, Napoleon gives the order that will decide everything. One sharp blow and the war is over. And this is the iconic moment. As 16,000 of Soult's men start surging up the slope, that thick fog that had hidden them suddenly begins to lift. The sun breaks through the clouds, and it reveals these massive French columns marching right up towards the heights. Can you imagine being an Allied commander up there? It must have looked like an entire army just materialized out of thin air. The legendary son of Austerlitz had just revealed the trap. For the Allies, the result was a complete catastrophe. As you can see from the situation later that day, their center was just shattered. The French now held the high ground, and from there they could just roll down on both flanks of the Allied army, which was now cut completely in two. What came next was a total collapse and a panicked, chaotic retreat. And really, the numbers here just tell the whole story. The Allies lost around 30,000 men, killed, wounded, or captured. That's over a third of their entire army, gone in one day. The French, who were technically on the attack for most of the battle, suffered only about 9,000 casualties. It was an unbelievably lopsided and decisive victory.
You see, a victory this total, this overwhelming, it doesn't just end a battle, it ends wars, and it completely reshapes nations. The political fallout from Austerlitz was immediate, and it was massive.
Just a few weeks later, on December 26th, the defeated Austrians had no choice but to sign the Treaty of Pressburg. And the terms were brutal. Austria was knocked out of the war, they had to give up huge chunks of territory, and they were forced to pay a massive fine. Just like that, the Third Coalition against France was completely shattered. And this timeline really shows you the domino effect. This one victory directly allows Napoleon to create something called the Confederation of the Rhine, basically a buffer zone of German states that were allied to him. And with this new political reality, the Holy Roman Empire, an institution that had been central to Europe for 1,000 years, was suddenly obsolete. It was formally dissolved in 1806. A single battle literally wiped an empire off the map. So, Napoleon's masterpiece gave him near total control over Central Europe. It was, without a doubt, the highest point of his military career, a display of tactical genius we still study today. But all of that, this stunning, perfect victory, it didn't bring lasting peace. It just set the stage for the next, even bigger conflict. Which kind of leaves you with a lingering question, right? How do you follow up a perfect victory?